Hey, welcome to How to Play, brought to you by the Games Capital. Today the game that we're examining is Hive. Now Hive is a two-player abstract strategy game. To me, Hive has a bit of a chessy feel to it. Now it doesn't have a board like chess and doesn't really look anything like it, but there are some definite similarities. Anyway, before we get into how to play, let's have a look at what's in the box. Well, basically what you get in the box of Hive are these little hexagonal shaped tiles. Now they're made of Bakelite, pretty tough. You've got 11 black and 11 white, a set for each player. And what they depict on them are various insects. So you've got spiders and ants, grasshoppers and so on. And that's basically what you get for the game. But included in the box is also this little handy zip-up carry bag. So what you can do is you can put all the pieces inside the bag, zip it up, and you can pretty much take it with you wherever you go. And the beauty of Hive is you don't need a lot of space to play it, just a flat surface. So I reckon that's pretty handy. All right, how do you play? To begin a game of Hive, each player will take one insect, place it out onto the table. They're placed side by side, and that forms the hive. From then on, players will take turns to either place a new insect tile to add to the hive, or moving a tile that already is part of the hive to reconfigure the shape and layout of the hive. Now each of the insects moves in a slightly different way, and we'll examine how that works in a moment. But the ultimate aim of the game is to completely surround your opponent's queen bee. So the queen can be surrounded by tiles of the same colour as it, or tiles of the other colour. It doesn't really matter, as long as your opponent's queen is completely surrounded by tiles of either colour, then you will win the game. Of course, you need to be careful that you look at your queen and make sure that it's not getting surrounded, so there's an attack and also a defence element to this game. So let's examine how each of the insects moves. So the first piece we'll look at is the ant. Now the ant's probably the most useful piece that you can have. Basically the ant can move around the outside of the hive as far as he likes in any direction. So basically my ant, if I'm sitting here, I can take my ant and move it anywhere around the outside and stop at any point and end my turn. So that's the ant. The grasshopper also is a very useful piece. Now grasshoppers move in the same way that real grasshoppers move. They jump. Basically they jump in a straight line into the next empty spot, so they can jump over pieces. So for example, if my grasshopper is here, I can jump in a straight line into that spot there. Or if my grasshopper was here, I can jump all the way to the end of the line. Grasshoppers can be very useful for getting into places that aren't accessible by other insects. So that's the grasshopper. The next piece is the spider. Now the spider is a little bit more restricted in how it can move. A spider has to move exactly 3 spaces, either to the left or to the right. So for example, if my spider is here, I must move 1, 2, 3, and I have to end my turn at that spot. Or I could go the other way, but exactly 3 spaces. So you're a little bit more limited with the spider. It requires you to be a little bit more calculating with where you place it as to how you're going to get the most effectiveness out of your spider. The beetle is quite an interesting piece as well. Now the beetle can only move 1 space at a time. However, the beetle can also move up on top of another piece. So effectively he can walk from one side of the hive to the other, 1 space at a time. Also, while a beetle is sitting on top of another piece, effectively that piece is out of the game, cannot be used until the beetle moves off it. As well as that, beetles can also stack up, so you can end up with quite a stack of beetles as they crawl over the top of the hive. And the final piece is, of course, the queen bee. Now the queen bee is a little bit like the king in chess. It's the most important piece you're trying to protect, but it also is very limited in its movement. The queen can just move 1 space either to the right or to the left. And that potentially will allow it to get out of a difficult situation, but otherwise not a particularly useful piece. So that's all of the pieces in play. Let's just examine a couple more rules that are fairly important in terms of gameplay. So at the start of the game, after you've placed those first initial 2 pieces, when you're introducing a new piece to the board, it is only allowed to touch tiles of the same colour. Once it's out on the board and you move it, you can then move and touch the other player's pieces, but initially it's only allowed to touch pieces of your colour. As well as that, pieces cannot be moved until the queen bee is in play, and the queen must be placed by the 4th turn. So if you're up to your 3rd turn and you've placed a tile and you haven't yet put the queen out, then the queen must go out on that 4th turn. But it can be placed in any of those earlier turns. So a very important rule in this game is the 1 hive rule. Now basically what that means is that the hive can never be split into 2. So if you were trying to move a piece that would cause that to happen, you wouldn't be allowed to do it. For example, in this setup, if I wanted to move my grasshopper over here, that would cause the hive to be split in 2, so I wouldn't be allowed to do it. So effectively, my grasshopper is pinned to that spot, unable to move until I redesign the hive so that I can free that piece up. So this could be part of your strategy. For example, if I was white, I could move my ant around the hive to this spot, and that would effectively lock my opponent's grasshopper. He wouldn't be able to move it because if he did so, he would separate my ant from the hive. Not allowed to do that. So you can pin other players' pieces, and that can form a very good strategy during the game. So as mentioned, to win the game of Hive, you need to completely surround your opponent's queen with tiles. You don't have to get all of your tiles into play during the game, and in fact most games you'll probably have 1 or 2 left over, as long as the queen tile is out by that 4th turn.
In summary, players take turns either adding insects to the hive or moving insects that are part of the hive. The hive may never be split into 2 parts, and so some tiles can be pinned by others. The winner is the player who manages to completely surround his opponent's queen bee with tiles of either colour.
Now Hive is an excellent example of a 2-player strategy game. It plays relatively quickly, although I have seen games where the balance has shifted from player to player back and forth during the game. It's quite interesting developing different strategies for the way the different pieces move and figuring out the best options. So if you like a good 2-player strategy game, you can't go past Hive. So thank you for watching and happy gaming.